Yeah. Surprise, a little different than you're used to. Yeah. Dropping these bars on YouTube, knowledge I introduce you. Yeah. We chasing this money like it's the prize, it's the voodoo. Fugazi, fugazi, it's just a lie we buying into. We need some cars on deck. Get the rollies, get the moe, all the Mars on deck.
How are we, guys? Welcome. Thank you for joining me. Right, so I want to talk a little bit about something that was I found in the news today, and actually, it was published, or at least brought about by a group of people that I used to work with when I was in Canary Wharf. I did a lot of work with this firm, and they're talking about the fact that the number of UK ISA millionaires has tripled in the last 12 months. Interestingly. So I want to talk a little bit about that. And I actually just want to kind of address, how realistic is this for people to become an ISA millionaire? Obviously, we talk a lot about ISAs here on the channel and across the podcast and over on Instagram as being one of the very first accounts that you should look at because of the tax-free status. So we are going to talk a little bit about the benefits of it, and maybe look, what does that look like if you're an ISA millionaire and you're able to take income from that as well? What does that physically look like? But how long does it actually take? And so there is a question in the poll for you, which I would love for you to answer for me. How long do you think it would take for you to become an ISA millionaire if you contributed to your ISAs the full £20,000 and you achieved a 7% return annually? Let me know in the poll. You can vote. There are two options there. There's 22 years and 15 years. Let me know what it is that you think. But I'm going to run through the article, and we're also going to test the theory of what they think is the right time frame, and then maybe talk a little bit about what does that actually look like? What is the benefit for you if you are lucky enough to amass £1 million into ISAs? And I think as well, there is something that shouldn't need to be said, which I'm also going to say, but I'll leave that until much later on in the live. So before we get started, if you do get value from this, please remember to smash the like button. It just helps other people pick this video up as well. The algorithm recommends it for other people to see, and it just means that the channel grows and other people get to benefit from the content as well. So let's have a look at this. And I hate the Express, by the way, but this is actually in the Express. So the number of ISA millionaires almost triples in 1 year. How could you become one of them? Well, you're not going to become one of them overnight. Let's get that out of the way. But let's have a quick look at what they're basically saying here. So obviously, ISAs are a popular tax-free savings account, but some savers are able to successfully invest enough to become millionaires. Now, it's worthwhile noting, they are talking exclusively about investment stocks and shares ISAs here, not cash ISAs here, okay? So this is open work that is basically performed a freedom of information request. And it's revealed that the number of millionaires tracked by HMRC hit 4,070 people as of April 2021. Now, in this context, I was a little confused when I was reading this. I think this is the general number of millionaires, not ISA millionaires specifically, but over 4,000 millionaires in the UK as of April 21. I would imagine that number's actually jumped up quite a bit. It also says here, this is nearly triple the 480 millionaires reported by HMRC the year before, with the majority being stocks and shares investors. So again, the language in here, I'm confused whether this is specifically 4,070 ISA millionaires or just normal millionaires. I think there might have been an omission here, effectively. That's what they're saying. Now, interestingly, according to the data, the top 50 investors are sitting on an average savings pot of £8.5 million. Now, I will say this right now. How long did I spend working with Open Work in Canary Wharf when I was looking after them? I probably spent 3 years working with Open Work. And Open Work, essentially, they are a firm of financial advisors. They've got their own funds. They've got a huge amount of financial advisors, protection advisors, and generally speaking, their clients are normally quite wealthy, which kind of makes sense that the average saver or investor per se is sat on £8.5 million. I think for most people, that is a dream that everyone would want to get to, and it's definitely something that is worthwhile aspiring to. But you can't get away from the fact that you're talking about large numbers here, and get into the 8.5 million quid is definitely going to be depending on income levels and how successful you are increasing your income and generating multiple streams of income, because it just goes with the territory essentially. But I just want to jump very quickly to the main bit, which was most interesting to me, quoted here. Now, it says here, since 2016, the number of ISA millionaires has risen almost tenfold from when it was back in 2016, which was about 450 millionaires. Now, Settle Mehta, I know Settle, he's the head of partnership services at Open Work Partnership, shared why more ISA millionaires are being created than ever. And a part of this will be because obviously within an ISA, it is all tax-free returns. And when you factor in things like compound interest as well, the compound effect takes even more, because number one, you're not paying either 20 or 40% tax, depending on your tax bracket. You're able to compound that money into it as well. So it's great. He explained that ISAs have not only created thousands of millionaires, but it has also empowered millionaires of ordinary investors to build a nest egg alongside their pension. And I'll talk about ISAs and pensions side by side in a moment. It's perhaps the best tax-free investment wrapper in the Western world, which I know that you've heard me say a number of times. Of course, becoming a millionaire, an ISA millionaire, is not easy. It doesn't happen overnight, and it does take a little bit of know-how. But these are the stats, and I want to test these stats. It says here, a stocks and shares ISA holder consistently maxing out their £20,000 annual allowance could reasonably, interesting choice of words, reasonably expect to smash through the seven-figure mark after around 22 years, assuming average returns of 7% per year. Now, this is what I've literally been doing just before we went live, just to test that theory. So in here, I've got a compound interest calculator. Now, obviously, this will not factor in charges. Now, that's worthwhile bearing in mind, because if you are using someone like a financial advisor or a financial advisory network, you have to factor in the costs of their services and the cost of the products that you're essentially using. The compound interest calculator doesn't do this, but the numbers do ring true if you discount all charges at this point in time. So this basically talks about £20,000 as your initial investment, an interest rate of 7% per year, looking at over 22 years with an annual contribution of £20,000. And that is what it gets you. It gets to about 1,068,068 really, to just over 1 million quid. And it means that you would have contributed over that period of time £440,000, but the returns on the investment that you would have gained will be around about £608,722. So that's a 343 time weighted rate of return on the investments. Now, clearly, I'm interested to see what this looks like with 15 actually, to see where you would actually come to. Just for those of you who may have clicked 15 in the chat section and voted that in the comments, let's have a look at where you would have got to on over 15. See, this is the power of compound interest. Half. So you wouldn't expect, if you didn't understand how compound interest works, to be at over £1 million at 22 years, which is a 7 years difference, but at 557,000 with a 15-year term. It's quite powerful, and this just demonstrates the power of compound interest. And just look at it's almost double. The time-weighted rate of return is almost double, 343 to 175.9%. You can see on there as well, 300,000 contribution opposed to 440. But your return on this is 237 versus what, 608,000 roughly. So compound interest is huge. And obviously, as you get to larger numbers, it compounds even more. Let's change this back into to 22 years for the benefit of everyone, so you can actually see what that does. Huge numbers. Now, obviously, let's get real for a minute, because I think that's like blue sky scenario. We're in the clouds right now. Let's get real for a moment. I think it's unlikely that most people, ordinary people, will be able to save £20,000 every single year into an ISA. Like I said, that is going to be heavily dependent on your level of income and your ability to generate income, because you need surplus cash to be able to go into it. I think over the past 3 years, I've only managed it maybe once over the past 3 years whilst I've been contributing, but that's the first time, probably last year, that I've managed to put in the full £20,000. It takes some doing, and that's just being real. It's not an easy thing to do. But I think the larger conversation to be had here is, look, to be an ISA millionaire is fantastic. That's great, okay? But what about getting to 100,000, 200,000 pounds? Anything that you can amass into an ISA is going to be of positive impact to you from a financial, lifestyle, and probably just from a well-being point of view, because it is tax-free. And this is where we're going to talk about ISAs versus pensions, because this is one of the conversations that I get all the time. The main difference between, having ISAs, so Cecil mentioned in there that people use ISAs as a backup to their pension. And it's really important to understand the distinction between your ISAs and your pensions and how they both operate and how they're both treated from a tax position point of view as well. Now, let's start with the ISAs. They are tax-free. All of your contributions, all of your returns, all of the interest that you gain is completely tax-free. So if you did amass, let's go back to this screen right here. If you did amass just over £1 million into your pension and you wanted to retire today, you could comfortably, I would argue, retire on this. Let's just say you use the 4% rule, okay? And I know that the 4% rule does have some issues. It does have some challenges. It's not the perfect way to calculate it, but for simplicity, I'm just going to round this down to £1 million, okay? If you use the 4% rule, it means that you can take £40,000 per year in income tax-free. Now, for most people, if you get to retirement age and you have no mortgage to pay, you have no debts to pay, and you're simply looking at your living expenses, £40,000 is plenty for a lot of people, for the average person. Now, the difference between this and the pension is, if you had the same amount in a pension, well, yes, you've got your £12,580 personal allowance, which you can offset. But if you're taking £40,000, you'll be paying, let me just do this very, very quickly. You'll be paying tax on £27,420 of that per year, either at your 20%. Well, in this instance, it will be 20%. If you have other income coming on top of that, you could possibly breach the 40% tax bracket. And so for the longest time, ISAs have been this really attractive vehicle to park money into, with the vision that what happens in the future is you can use it to generate income and pay zero tax on it. The other benefit that you have, well, let's move on to pensions actually, because whilst pensions, let me just come full screen, whilst pensions are taxable at the point of you taking an income, what you get with the pension is you will get tax relief at your relevant tax rate on your contributions. So in other words, if you're a beta rate taxpayer, it works out for that for every £75 that you pay in, you get £25 in tax relief top up from the government by way of a tax relief, right? As I've already said. Now, the problem is when you come to retirement, you've got to pay tax on the income that you draw from that. So there's tax benefit on the way in. You've got to pay tax on the way out. So some people look at pensions and go, well, actually, what difference does it make? They are taking what they give to you early later on, right? So you're getting the tax relief early, but you're paying that back in tax when you come to take an income. And so ISAs have a distinct advantage in that front, because whilst you don't get tax relief on the way in, all of your growth and your contributions into it, although they are taxed, because obviously you would have paid tax on it because it comes from income, but all of your growth and the contributions will be tax-free no matter how much it amasses to. It could amass to 10 million, 4 million, 5 million. It does not matter. It's all tax-free. Now, in addition to this, if you think about pensions, you think about inheritance tax. So most people, you have a residence nil rate band, and you've got your normal nil rate band. For a single person, it's £500,000 that you can pass on to your loved ones, beneficiaries, before you start to pay tax. For a married couple, it's about £1 million now. So it's 500,000 times 2. Your pensions sit outside of your estate for inheritance tax purposes. So that means, let's just go blue sky scenario. You've got £1 million in ISAs. You also have, say, £1 million in pensions. From a tax point of view, if you're sat down with a financial advisor, the advice would be go and spend your ISA money, because the income is tax-free. And whilst ISAs are part of your estate for you to pass it on to your loved ones if you're no longer around, the idea is if you spend most of the money that's in the ISA, well, you're going to have a pension which is outside of the estate, which you've not used, which you can pass on to your beneficiaries in a much, much more tax efficient manner. And that inheritance tax conversation right there is quite an in-depth one. There are lots of nuances. It might be worthwhile I do maybe a video or a session on that specifically. But ISAs are a really, really powerful vehicle. And yes, we're talking about the fact that UK, there are triple the UK ISA millionaires than there were 12 months ago. But the reality is that most people, most ordinary people, are not going to get there. Having said that, it doesn't mean that you should be discouraged and completely discount ISAs altogether, because it doesn't matter how much you have in there. If you're able to do a great job and get 200, 300,000 pounds into an ISA, and you're contributing into a workplace pension alongside it, all of this adds up, and it gives you more choice at the point of when you actually need it. So whilst this may seem unattainable for a lot of people, it is definitely something to aspire to. It's something to work towards, with the understanding of, look, you might not necessarily get there, but even if you get to 500,000, you've done a good job. You've amassed quite a bit. And this is one of the things that I wish that, I'd learned when I was 18, 19 years old, because the reality is we've looked at this being a 22-year long journey, right? Now imagine what it would be like if you were 20 odd years old and you basically formed the habit of putting 10% of your earnings every single month into some kind of ISA of some kind. Yes, you may not breach the £20,000 maximum limit, but the fact that you're putting 10% into an investment every single month with compound interest at the annual rate of return that the markets deliver, be that 7%, 5%, or even 10% if you wanted to go that high, right? If you wanted to be bullish, go 10%. I would argue that if you did that when you started at 20, by the time you hit 42, which is in a blink of an eye, I would argue that you'd have a really nice pot of money right there that gives you options, let alone what that might look like if you continue for a further 20 odd years to take you into, 60, 62. I mean, let's actually do this right now, because I'm interested to know. Let's do this right now. Let's say you started this at age 20. All right, let's play around with these numbers actually, because let's not assume that a 20-year-old isn't going to be able to put 20 grand into an ISA. Most 20-year-olds cannot do that. But let's just say, for example, I'm going to say 2 grand, right? Put 2 grand in to an ISA, and you did that every single year, just religiously, 7% return. Let's look at 22 years first, just to see what impact this might actually have. Okay, so £106,000 there, all right? And bearing in mind, this is under the assumption that, during that 22-year period, you obviously you're going to earn more money, right? So more may be going into this. But the contributions here are 44 grand, £60,000 return. Now, let's just say you're able to do this over a 42-year period. See what that comes to. Oh, go there. I would argue that that's a pretty healthy habit to cultivate over time. And I wish this is something that someone told me when I was 18, 19. Just develop the habit. And I talk about this in my book as well, that for the fact that it's not necessarily the focus on how much you can put into these kind of structures or these kind of accounts. It's focusing on building the habit and really embedding the habit of having a certain percentage. Don't care whether it's 1%, 2%, 5%, whatever it may be. Focus on having a percentage going into these kind of structures. Because as you earn more, if it is, say, 5% that you've dedicated to, and you've been doing that through 20 odd years, you might start off earning, £1,000 in your first job. Okay, 5% is only 50 quid. But you fast forward 10 years, you might be earning 10 grand. Now, all of a sudden, you're putting in way, way more, right? And as you get older and you start to get into your peak performance years, you might be earning more money. This becomes even more powerful. I think on social media, there is a lot of talk about the millionaire status, and it's very attractive and very alluring for what it means and what it could entail in terms of lifestyle. And to a certain extent, there is this fallacy that once you're a millionaire, all your troubles go away. I can tell you right now, I've worked with people where it makes things so much worse, and people hate it. And it's why you need to have the fundamentals in place. I think there's a fallacy around this. I think there should be more of a focus on, the habits and the behaviors, and just understanding what really matters to you. Because money is one thing. It's a tool, right? But it isn't the end all and be all of everything. I want to know what you guys actually think, actually. Let me have a look at the poll quickly and see what you guys are saying here. Let's actually end the poll. So these are these are the results. So 22% of you voted for, 75% of you voted for 22 years. 24% of you voted for 15 years. So we've just shown here it's 22 years it would take if you contributed your ISA allowance every single year, £20,000, and an average return annually of 7%. It would take you 22 years to be an ISA millionaire. And let me just get into the comments, see what you guys are saying. I mean, do you think, let me know, do you think, let me phrase this the right way around. If you had a choice, because I get this question all the time, pension versus ISA, which would you lean to given the conversation that we've had today? Pension or an ISA? Bearing in mind, obviously, contribution levels are very, very different for both. With a pension, you can now contribute £60,000, but you have to be earning that amount in salary to contribute that much. Caveat right there. An ISA is 20 grand. We don't know whether there's going to be an increase to the ISA allowance in coming years. That's going to be down to the government. But currently, given the conversation we've had this evening, which would you go towards, ISA or pension? Let me know. And I'm just going to scroll through some of the comments here. There is a question here. Hi, Pete. Are banks required by law for the taxman to reveal more information than just how much interest you're earning in your savings? Example, where the deposit came from. Banks have certain rules and obligations they have to fulfill in terms of money laundering, anti-money laundering, checking that obviously the money isn't coming from proceeds of crime, for example. So they have to do anti-money laundering checks. Those things, they're kept on file. I wouldn't say that they're necessarily reported to HMRC. I don't think they are. But in terms of things like your ISAs, for example, how they know how much you've paid into your ISA is because with an ISA, you have to give your national insurance number. So they track it through your national insurance number, and all providers have to provide that information to HMRC. So if you've got 4 ISAs elsewhere, in one season, in one ISA period, ISA tax year, if they looked into it, they would be able to know whether you've contributed into more than one and how much you've actually got. HMRC do have more reaching powers now. I have friends who work for a company who do a lot of work with HMRC, and the capabilities that they have are pretty scary. They can, if they wanted to, get balances on your bank account if they wanted to. And the bank does have to give them information, but the bank does have anti-money laundering requirements that they have to meet, just in terms of making sure that the money that you're putting in is clean. Meji, how you doing? How you doing? Yes, this is a stocks and shares ISA, Josh. You'd be lucky to get 7% for the next 22 years, laugh out loud. Fixed rate savings don't go beyond 5 or 10 years. Well, we're talking about this is investment, stocks and shares returns. So markets, investing in the markets. The S&P 500 traditionally returned, well, 10% is what the rumor is. Obviously, that's no indication of future performance. But if you were to take that track record, you would argue that you should be able to achieve 7% in the markets, depending on market cycles. I wouldn't say it's far fetched at all, but we're not comparing fixed rate accounts and stocks and shares. They're two different kettles of fish. And in an environment when savings rates have gone up, like we've mentioned in one of the other lives, I think it was this week, fixed rate accounts become way more attractive than just investing in the markets right now, because in a fixed rate, it's a guaranteed rate of return. Why would you take the risk investing in the stock market? On that topic, I will be doing a live in a few weeks' time. Well, not a few weeks' time. It's probably going to be in a month's time, where we're going to delve into all of that as a conversation. Given interest rates and inflation as it currently is right now, I'm going to have an expert portfolio manager with me on a live. How do you go about, ascertaining and deciding whether or not you should be investing in the markets? Because there is a risk, and it's a valid point. The reason why a lot of people have been so interested to invest in the markets recently is because interest rates have been so low. Now the pendulum's swinging the opposite way. Interest rates are coming up. It's more attractive. You haven't got to take the risk. You haven't got to worry about market volatility. So investing potentially becomes less attractive. Richard, I became a millionaire by converting my wealth into Venezuelan. You know what? There are currencies. I mean, look, it's amazing how it works in different countries because, and again, maybe this is just a Western thing, right? But in the Western world, we talk about being a millionaire and this millionaire status and stuff, and people are obsessed with it. I get it. I do. I get it. But depending on where you are in the world, like, you can have a million of the currency in your account, and it makes no difference at all. And it's just the word. It's just the word millionaire. But it has so much allure, so much attraction. It's like, if you think about, so my parents are Nigerian. I lived in Nigeria for 10 years, right? The currency exchange from the naira to the pound is ridiculous. The last time I checked, it was like 500 naira for £1. So you go with £1, you get 500 naira there, which is huge. It sounds huge, but what you can buy with that 500 naira is like a conversion of what you could buy with, I don't know, 20 quid or something like that, right? You have that currency conversion and local inflation. And when you think about, for example, Afrobeats, it's huge right now. A lot of the big Afrobeat artists are Nigerian. You've got so many of them. Davido is a prime example, right? That guy, so I have friends who are still out there, and one of my friends is very, very well connected. Those guys are earning millions in pounds. When they take their money back home, they're billionaires. And if you have a conversation with him and he says, I'm a billionaire, it's not the same type of billionaire. He's a millionaire in Western society, but over there, he's a billionaire. And that's why it's so bizarre when you think about a connection of a word to what you think it means and how it means different things in different locations across the world. Because in Venezuela, you could have a million of their own money, but guess what? You convert it back to Western currency and it's nothing. It's pennies. So this is what someone else is confirming here. Became a Korean millionaire by converting 600 quid. It's all about perspective. And this is why it's so crazy. This obsession. Millionaire, millionaire, millionaire. It's like you can be a property millionaire. Like there is this just weird like perception of you're a millionaire, you've got cash. Like, no, there are property millionaires who are broke because it's not liquid cash. Like even the wealthiest people on the planet, people like Elon Musk. Now, he will have a very healthy bank balance, I would imagine, right? But if you think about his net worth being in the hundreds and something of billions, he hasn't got that sat in an account. He's got very little sat in the account in comparison to his net worth. And oftentimes there is that disconnection that people often feel? Like he's got all of this money just sat in the bank so he could give everyone a quid. Like, no, he couldn't, because he doesn't have that. And I've been hearing it's funny what these people do. And if you listen to Robert Kiyosaki, he's a weird guy, man. He really is. He says some very, very strange stuff. But his philosophy around, you know, he's a millionaire, but essentially he lives off debt, leveraged debt, because in the States, and certainly in the UK as well, you don't pay tax on debt. And this is what a lot of these people will do. So Elon will have X amount of shares in Tesla valued at X amount. And what he will do is he will take a line of credit against the value of his Tesla shares. That will be provided to him by the bank with a guarantee that if we ever need this money, you can cash in your shares to pay this debt off. But because it is a line of credit, i.e. debt, he never pays any tax on any of this. The only time he will pay tax is when he actually sells those shares to pay down this facility. It's crazy how the wealthy operate. And whilst it's all very, very clever and it's all above board and legal, I just have this thing in the back of my mind thinking there's play in the system, then there's also play in the system. Certainly when you get to that level, it's almost your obligation to ensure that you give back to society, to give back to the system that allowed you to be that advantageous, that you could become that wealthy. And it sticks in my throat when I hear people like Robert Kiyosaki talk about, I just take debt. I live off debt because I pay zero tax, and they're proud of it. And I'm like, well done. It's an achievement, but seriously, is that what we've come to? I don't know. You tell me if I'm wrong in the chat. Let me know. But I feel like a lot of people feel exactly the same way. You've got to pay your way, particularly if you live in a system, in a society that has allowed you to become that wealthy. Why not give back so that you can help the society that got you there, that contributed in some way, shape, or form to you being there? And that isn't, giving you a leg up, but giving back is really, really important. Measure saying, I love stocks and shares ISA. The best thing I've ever learned and started to use. Very, very good. Mark, ISA question. Can I keep an ISA moving from the UK to Asia? I understand I can no longer add to it once leaving the UK, but do the compounding dividends also count as an addition? Yes. So if you're leaving the UK, you need to let HMRC know. And that means that you can no longer contribute. You can keep the account open, as far as I'm aware, with my understanding, unless anything's changed. I don't think they have. You can keep the account, you can keep it invested, and yes, all of the returns will still be tax-free, but you cannot contribute to the ISA if you're leaving. So, yeah, you'll be safe. Cecilia's just saying here, I really like the ISA limit will be reduced I really think the ISA limit will be reduced in years to come. I hope not. I think it will take a very, very brave government to be able to do it. And if I'm honest, if you look at what's happened in the last couple of budgets where they've attacked capital gains allowance, they've attacked dividend allowance, those are the two major ones that they attacked. It would have been very, very easy for them to reduce ISA allowances. I don't think they'll do it because ordinary people use ISAs. And they're acutely aware now that pretty much it's the only allowance that really they have a realistic chance of, number one, easily accessing and maybe maxing out as a normal person. It's not necessarily seen as a wealthy person's instrument or account type. So it would take a really brave government, I feel, to reduce the ISA allowance moving forward. I think it will probably remain stagnant because we're long overdue to have that allowance increased at some point. But then again, I could be wrong. I could be 100% wrong, and there might be a reduction. But I don't know that they would. Would Labour do it? I don't think so. What Labour's likely to do is to reduce the amount you can contribute into your pensions. If you remember the last budget, it went up from £40,000 to £60,000. And, I was asked to comment on this. I think it was, who did I comment on it for? I think it was like, who did I do the show with? I can't remember. It's either BBC or ITV. I did a segment when I was like, well, and they were asking me, well, why do you think? I was like, they said it was because they wanted to encourage doctors to come back. But I'm like, I said, there are plenty of high earners who will be rubbing their hands thinking, oh my God, yeah, that's an extra 20K I can throw into my already large pension. So I think Labour will probably get rid of that before they attack the ISA, because that from a political campaigning point of view definitely has the ability to be turned into a we're fighting for you, leveling the playing field type narrative. And I think that's probably what will happen before ISIS. Adam West, even if people put a 5K deposit and chunk in £399 a month for 20 years at 7%, could 7% could return over £200,000, which is not bad, which is not a bad amount. That's what people spend on a car payment. You know what? Let's just do that right now. Actually, let's do it right now. Let's run that example. But you're making a really, really strong point there, mate. And I trust me, I'm 100% with you. And instead of spending 200, 300 quid on 400 quid on a car, you know, forego that. Let's go back 22 years here. Let's do the contributions here. What did you say? $399. And let's do that monthly. And let's see what that works out at. 330 grand. 330 grand. Now, look, would that be realistic? £399? Because look, if you need a car, you need a car. But I think the conversation here is, do you need a £400 car? Probably not. Could you stomach a £200 car and put £200 into an ISA like this, right? So let's just change this number. And obviously this is depending on how much you earn, obviously, right? But even then it's £209,000. Come on, like seriously. This is where I talk about the fact that, you know, our thinking needs to change a little bit. And obviously social media encourages consumerism and all this kind of stuff, which is, it's great because you buy things, you feel good and all this kind of stuff. But a prime example, I did a post on Instagram, and as much as like my car's paid off, it's been paid off now for like 3 or 4 years. I love the car, but every single year it's a money pit, and it's a money pit for a couple of reasons. Every year, my MOT and my insurance are within a month of each other. So right now is MOT time. Now, every year MOT, I've got a lot of power going through my rear wheels. So I have to typically replace my rear tires every single year. I just replaced them today. 2 rear tires, £658 for 2 rear tires. The front ones are probably going to be another 500 quid on top of that once I get around to replacing those. So annually, I'm talking maybe 1,200 quid for tires. And then obviously insurance. And I've been really unlucky over the past 12 months. I've had 2 people drive into me. So whilst they're not my fault, you know what insurance is like. They're going to rate me anyway and increase my insurance. So my insurance and tires probably come to 3 grand a year. For what? Like seriously, like the car's paid off, but it pains me, and I prepare for it. I've got the money set aside. But it pains me to have to pay that money out every single year. And it is about thinking and being proactive in our thinking, because imagine you still have your car payments of 400 quid. You're putting fuel in it. Then you've got to replace your tires, and your tires will probably won't be as expensive as mine, but you still might be paying, 100 quid, 200 quid on tires, right? Per tire, something like that. I don't know. It's the running cost, the MOT. Then you got to pay road tax, and you've got to, if you're driving a diesel, you got to put AdBlue in it. It's like, it's a money pit. It's a money pit. And whilst yes, it's functional, social media has us in this, this idea that it's got to be the best thing. And obviously, you do want a nice car. Like if you're doing a lot of mileage, it's nice to be in a comfortable car. I completely get that. I used to do 50, 60,000 miles a year in my old job in Canary Wharf. So having a comfortable car is really important. But if you're not really using your car that much, do you need to spend 400 quid on a car? Really? Especially if it's going to stretch you? Probably not, I would argue. But, this is where we need to start thinking about our utilization of cash. Cecilia saying here, once you get older, pension. In what way? Let's have a look. Okay. Oh, yeah. So this is in response to my question. So people are saying ISA, Celia's saying once you get older, ISA, but she's also saying split between both pensions and ISA. Yeah, good response on that. Josh was saying, I have multiple ISAs. What happens if you overcontribute? All right, okay. So if you overcontribute, I mean, look, HMRC typically doesn't like it. But if you overcontribute, if you just say to HMRC, say, look, it was a mistake. This is what happened. I didn't mean to do it. Generally speaking, they're okay. Sometimes they'll fine you if they find out that you've done it. And maybe if it's by a large amount, so you've really oversubscribed quite a bit, they might fine you. But for most people, if it's just an innocent mistake and it's a small amount, generally they'll just be like, "Oh, don't worry about it." Is what I've heard. Let's have a look at what other people are saying around ISA or pension. I think what Cecilia's just said here is the optimal approach: having an ISA, having a pension. Because remember what I explained, that their tax treatments are different. So from a tax point of view, and you will get to a stage where the tax consideration and the tax treatment becomes paramount. It's probably one of the first things you look at. First rule of financial planning: tax efficiency, right? So having both of them are advantageous, because it's like having a toolbox. And what you want to do is you want to say, right, which tool is best for the situation in which I find myself right now? And for most people, and I've certainly done this when I was advising, we sit down and we structure income. So we say, right, okay, what income do you need? Where do we take it from? What tool do we use? And in most cases, we use the ISAs first and leave the pensions last. Because why pay tax on income when you don't have to? So you simply take it off from the pension until that runs out, if it runs out, and then you move into the pension. Because what you've done is you've gained a good number of years paying zero tax for a period of time before you move into the instrument or the tool where you are going to be paying tax on the income generated from your pension. So oftentimes, this is the optimal way to approach it, generally speaking. I'm telling you, mate, listen, this word, I wonder, if you went to Indonesia, you went to Venezuela and said, I'm a millionaire. If you're expecting a good response, they'll probably think you're an idiot. You know what I mean? They'll just think you're an absolute idiot, because we put way too much weight and meaning on that word. But yeah. IP, is the Vanguard US equity fund accumulation a good index to invest in? It could be. It depends on what your outlook is and what you want to achieve. The US equity index is going to have, I think it has a good mixture of large, mid, and small cap companies in there. Could be quite volatile, but it really depends on what you're looking to achieve. The only thing that I would say is you're investing in the United States specifically. I mean, the United States is going through a bit of a bumpy. I mean, they've got elections soon. So, oftentimes that introduces volatility into the market. I would say there is an argument for you not just to look at the US exclusively, but to look more globally, to try and diversify across different economies and different regions across the world. Generally speaking, that's what most people would prescribe to be the most optimal way of investing, looking more globally than relying on one specific economy like the US. But that's, again, all about what you want to achieve, how long you have to achieve that goal, and what your appetite for risk and volatility is. So it's a bit of a wider conversation. I just can't tell you, yes, it's a great thing, because it could be good for me, but it may be wrong for you, and vice versa. It really depends why you're doing it all. Holy moly. So this is the Nigerian currency. So £1 right now is 1,170 naira. That's mad. That's mad. Thanks, CEO, for that. Someone else is also confirming it there. That's absolutely mad. So you imagine. Okay, wait, 1 second. What does it take to be a millionaire over there then, right? If you had 10 grand, yeah. If you have £10,000, you're a millionaire in Nigeria. 11.7 million naira. But what is that going to get you? I mean, I don't know how much cars cost out there right now, but cars can cost you 5 million, 7 million. So you think, like, hey, I'm boarding around with a 11.7 million naira. Maybe, but not really in Western standards. And this is, again, this connection to the word millionaire and what it basically means. It's like you see some of these guys like Davido and Debanch and all those guys who are like in Afrobeats and making serious money, right? Billionaires out there, and they are living freaking good life. I mean, you talk about Banana Island and oh my God. I'm telling you, right? You think we've had a look at holidays out there. My boy was saying, listen, if you want to go have a good time, you got to have a little bit of cash. And I'm like, really? Because I'm thinking the exchange rate and all that kind of stuff, and like, £10,000, that's 11.7. So surely for that's a holiday, that's okay. And goes, yeah, that might be okay for a holiday. But if you're trying to look at properties in Banana Island or Lekki or Echo Beach and Victoria Island, those kind of areas, like, dude, like you need some serious money for this, mate. It's like Nigerians will understand what I'm saying here. Maybe not for everyone here, but yeah, this exchange rate is pretty nuts. Now, I'm just saying here, ISA contributions due to tax wrapper benefits, I can withdraw whenever. That's also very, very true. Within your pension, obviously, you can't access until 55 under current legislation, your tax-free cash, that is. Whereas with the ISAs, you can access it at any given time because you can. Marcus is saying, hi, Pete, recent bank interest for savings getting better. It seems a lot only offer it on 1 year, then the rate drops. Are there any other offers, very long deals in years currently? There are some 2-year fixed rate ones that I've seen, but the interest rate is it's minusculely different, mate. I think I saw one the other day, and there was one by someone. I was going to do a video on this, and I couldn't find the account that they were referencing. But there's a new bank called Recognize Bank, and I think they've got a 1-year fixed rate. I think it was 6.1, and the 2-year I think was something like 6.2. And I've mentioned this on one of the lives prior. Like, if you're going to lock it in for 2 years, ideally you would want the rate to be a little bit better than the 1 year. So a 0.01% or 0.1% increase for a 2-year for me doesn't feel like an incentive. I would have liked to see, the 1 year is 6.1, 2 years 6.5. Yeah, cool. I can get with that. For me, it sits better, right? But it is down to the individual person. There are deals out there, but I haven't seen many beyond 2 years. And the reason I think that is because there's a bit of uncertainty around what's going to happen with interest rates over the next 2 years. I think the consensus is we will see interest rates start to come off, but at what rate? It won't be as steep a decline as it was an incline. So they won't go down as quick as they went up. But we know that they will come down anyway. It's just a question of how the Bank of England will decide to introduce the reduction in rates over the course of maybe a two or 3 year period. And what they wouldn't want to do is start offering, say, 5-year fixed rates at something like 7% if the Bank of England is going to start moving on interest rates. So typically I've seen 1 and 2 year fixed rates, generally speaking, and the difference isn't that much between the 1 or the 2. Main issues are generating consistent cash flow and increasing capital first. Investing comes. Yes, I would definitely agree with this one because, the income that you're able to generate is really, really important. Whether you're looking to buy a house, whether you're looking to save for a deposit, whether you're looking to invest, income is really, really important. And so there's an argument around if you are in work, trying to position yourself for promotions, upskilling so you can push yourself further within the corporate ladder, or if you're of the many people now who just think that working in a business as an employed person is a complete and utter waste of time, then thinking about how the entrepreneurial journey might look for you. Look, I've done both, and I have very, very strong opinions, which is for another live entirely. We can talk about, employed versus self-employed, but I've got strong opinions on the reality of both. Like, it's great on this side of the fence, but it's stressful. It's really stressful. People assume because you own your own business, you can, do whatever you want. And to a certain extent, you can. You can do whatever you want, but if you haven't got things in place, you're not paying bills because you're not earning any money. That's the reality. Whereas when I was in a job, I could leave 9 to 5 and be like, that's it. I'm having the weekend off. I'm getting paid. I could go off sick. I'm getting paid. I can go on holiday. I'm getting paid. On this side of the fence, no. You go on holiday and you've not got systems in place, you're not getting paid. You go off sick, you're not getting paid. And people don't necessarily understand what it takes to be on this side of the fence. And there's so much on social media now about quit your job, quiet quitting. And I completely get it, but nobody's talking about the real reality of it all. It is stressful beyond belief, but the rewards are huge if you have the stomach for it. So generating an income in whatever guise, be that going for promotions or being really good at your job so you can earn as much bonus as possible, is extremely important. You get that under your belt, and then it's all about, okay, I've got this money. How do I use it wisely? It's so much easier to budget and plan from a healthy income than it is if you have very, very little to play with. It's a completely different place. So I'll agree with this 1%, 100%. Yeah, US residents, they have their own, because they've got Roth IRAs, they've got 401ks. Their systems are very, very different. And each of those, so the Roth IRAs and 401ks, they do different things and they have different capabilities and functionalities. Some of them that actually are very, 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 very attractive. And it's like, why don't we have that over here? So their system is very, very different. So it's interesting. When you look at how they basically work and the functionalities of them all, and how you can write insurance policies and stuff like that, and take money, borrow money against your insurance policy. I wish we had that here in the UK, because that would change a lot of people's lives, but we just don't. ISA allowance must be increased to £30,000, and savings is backbones of the economy. I don't know if they'll increase it to 30 grand, mate. I would like to think that they would, but realistically, would they? I don't know. It might be a vote winning um, mandate, potentially, possibly. It would be very nice for sure. Cecilia's just saying, I wish too, mate. I wish too. So people are saying, large a majority of people can't max out 20K ARSA allowance. It's for ordinary people, it's hard. It is tough. I mean, when you think about it, right? What's that per month? It's £1,666 per month. So for an ordinary person, you've got to think about what income level you need to be at in order for you to comfortably pay your bills, be able to, set yourself the things in the non-essential bucket that I talk about in my book. So the things that you like doing, and then out of your disposable income into the other pot, contribute £1,666 per month to max out your 20 grand allowance. I would argue you probably need to be north of about 8K a month after tax to be able to do that comfortably. If maybe you're in London, I think you could probably do it less in other parts of the country. But for a lot of people, that's a lot. That's a big commitment that most people won't get to. There's a really nice conversation going on here, guys. Thank you for this. And just by the way, with 53 minutes in, so almost coming to the end of this, please don't forget, if you do get value from this, please smash the like button. We've spoken about a lot of good stuff here. It will just mean that the YouTube algorithm will recommend this to other people who may need to get the benefit of what we've spoken about here, in the contrast between ISAs and pensions, and this whole conversation about being an ISA millionaire. So please do take the time. If we can get it from 29 to, I don't know, let's get it to 45. That would be absolutely amazing. Thank you, guys. I mean, this is an allocation for I guess, the US for a portfolio. One thing I would say about this is it really depends on, again, why you're doing this. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the suggestion here, 50% dividend paying stocks or 40% in bonds, but that depends. So for that, for me, that would be a cautious risk profile, right? And then I would challenge whether dividend paying stocks are the ones you want to go for. Again, it might be, but it depends on what your outlook is. Because if you focus purely on dividend paying companies, then you're going to miss out companies that perform well that don't currently pay dividends, i.e., companies like Tesla, for example, performed very, very well, but don't currently pay dividends. So dividend paying companies are great. They're strong, they're established. In times where the markets are a little bit rocky, they can be a very, very good pick. But that really depends on your risk profile. Are you a cautious investor? Are you one who wants to be a little bit more adventurous? Which one you are also depends on the time that you have when you actually invest in too. So if you're investing for 15 years, you can probably afford to take more risk for sure, because you can wait out the markets being volatile and falling. You can wait for it to come back. But if your window is relatively short, you can't afford to take that level of risk, which means that, even a 50% allocation to dividend stocks or 50% allocation to equities may be a bit too much for you. I mean, you shouldn't be investing for less than 5 years anyway. So any term shorter than that, don't even bother. But again, why? What are you doing it for? What's the outlook and stuff? These are the things that you need to consider. And it's very, very easy for me to say, be like, oh, just do that. But it has to be based on an understanding of what you want to achieve. And I think it's really, really important to emphasize that. Normally, if you go into something like the US equity index, for example, that's all in equities. It's all in invested in shares in equities where your risk is high. You don't have a bond allocation. You certainly won't have, well, you might have a small cash allocation, but you've got no bonds to counterbalance. And this is where you start talking about the understanding of what a stock is and what a bond does and how they counterbalance each other. If you're buying bond funds, you're still going to see some volatility in there as well. So it's all about having a good understanding of how it all works more than anything else. Let's have a look at this, Robert. As Peter says, pension contributions are a good way to be tax efficient. I'm going for a manager's role and was looking at the impact as a salary increase in order to still get child benefit. Yeah. So salary sacrifice to keep it below, I think it's about 50 grand or so take home before you start losing all of your child benefits and stuff. I mean, salary sacrifice and will help you with that to a certain degree. It's hard, man. It really, really is. Yeah. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. And look, our system isn't perfect, but the fact that you're able to do that so that you can keep some benefits that will help you in the immediate term, particularly with cost of living, and childcare cost is not freaking cheap. I mean, I haven't got kids, but I've worked with enough people to know how expensive it is. It's mad. Like one of my mates, paying £1,000 a month for childcare. It's crazy. It's absolutely nuts. So the fact that you have this option to be able to pay more into the pension, keep a bit more of a benefit to help you in immediacy, but knowing that the increased pension contributions are going to help you amass a bigger pension pot later on. Our system isn't perfect, but there are instances where you can point to it being, okay, that's probably a good thing that we have this in place. And this is a prime example of when, we can look at those kind of instances. I love the conversation that's happening here. Cecilia, Jesnia, knowledge seeker, brilliant contributions, really, really good. Let's have a look at this question. Does anyone think that because savings rates are 5%, you shouldn't invest in the markets completely? The average return of the market is still higher, and a lot of companies are still undervalued. This is a very, very good question. I think it's all about your outlook and how you perceive things right now. The reality is, and this is where we can start to have really good conversations about the difference between savings and investing and the role of each in your financial plan. Because investing is long term. You've made a great point here. A lot of companies are still undervalued. If you think about the Peter Lynch's, the Warren Buffett's, the professional investors of this world, what do you think they're doing right now? Take a guess. They're looking at these companies thinking, freaking awesome. I'm going to go fill my boots. But that's with their investor hat on, because they know they've been here before. Companies are undervalued. As long as they're solid companies, they'll recover. The share price will increase. And if I've got it at like freaking £1 when it used to be £1.50, the chances it's going to get back to £1.50 and maybe even £1.80, £2, I'm going to make some money. This is the way investors look at things. I think where we were before was because interest rates were so low, people wanted to make their money work harder. They just went for investments anyway. And a lot of people, unfortunately, skipped the whole conversation around, look, it's risky, because guess what? There were charlatans across YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, telling people, oh, this stock is going to 10x, 5x, 2x, 3x, whatever. And that's all they saw. They saw the shiny lights of, I can make so much money. The conversation of risk never came into it. Now we can have a more level-headed conversation to say, look, in a savings account, you're safe. You're going to get your return of 4 or 5%. Over here, companies are undervalued. The upside is huge, but guess what? It's going to take you a little longer to be able to realize this. So you got to practice delayed gratification, but the upside could be really, really good. Which one do you want to take? In opposed to this didn't exist before. So it was here. And then charlatans were like 10x, 5x, 15x, 20x. You're going to make a ton of money. There are now two options that we can really talk about from a really good point of view. So I think, yes, there is certainly a conversation around whether or not people will lean more towards savings and investing. And I think people do. In times like this, the people who are risk averse, who don't want to take the risk, will go for a savings account. For those people who understand that companies are undervalued and it's an opportunity, they will invest. But when you look at the retail investing space specifically and the huge volumes that were going into the markets through 2021, maybe even through summer 2022, that's going to fall off for sure. I built a good savings pot for my kids. My approach is a water fountain type, fixed monthly saver, easy access savings account. Then my plan is to start an ISA stocks and shares. Is that a good plan? Yes, potentially, Robert. I mean, if your kids, look, one of the best things you can do for a kid is, things like junior ISAs. £9,000 is the limit. And you can have it in cash, you can have it in stocks and shares. But if you have it in stocks and shares, I don't know how old your kids are. Let's just say you've got a 5-year-old, for example. I'll come to a caveat, because this is a big caveat that a lot of parents are concerned about. You potentially have a 13-year time horizon. All right. So let me just do some numbers for you really quickly. Because within a junior ISA, you can contribute, mom can contribute, uncles, aunts, nephews, anyone can contribute into the junior ISA for your children. And that's a great thing. So just imagine for 1 second, and again, please don't take this advice or, use this 7% rate that I've got here as this is definitely going to happen in the future. But I just want to, paint the picture for you potentially, right? So £9,000 is the allowance. Let's just say, between you, family members, friends, and birthdays and Christmases and all that kind of stuff, you were able to put £9,000 into a junior ISA, and you were to do that every single year. Your kid is 5, you've got a 13-year time period. I'll come to the caveat in a minute. Well, at 7% annual return, look at what that basically equates to. Is that right? Hang on 1 second. Oh, not monthly, annually. Sorry. I know your jaw might have dropped there. That's not the correct number. So yeah, £202,000. So the caveat is your child will have access to this pot of money come age 18. So the onus is on you to have conversation about, money, financial education, the value of money early. But take away the fear that a lot of parents have about their kids getting that kind of money when they're 18. Forget that for a minute and just think about an alternate reality where you've had conversations with your child and you've really had conversations about money, the value of money, the fact that you've been saving for them for a very, very long time. They're going to come into some cash. We really want them to do something positive with it. It's going to be the start that maybe you never had that you want them to have. Imagine you've had that conversation and it's effective, and your kid has £202,000. In today's world where people are struggling to come up with a deposit for a house, what difference is that going to make? Yes, it can go towards university fees. Yes, it can go towards, things like a car, whatever. But imagine, right, that towards a mortgage for a house, the start that you never had. Just think about that. It's really, really powerful. So you have a good plan there, but I would say definitely have a look at, a junior ISA for your children for sure, because that's life changing. That gives them a start that will mean that even from like thinking about the jobs they do and maybe taking the time to really discover what it is that they want to do, right? Not having to go through the hard yards, learn the hard way. And yes, don't get me wrong, that's a privilege. 100%. It's a privilege if you can get to that sum, or even anywhere near that. It's a privilege. Makes the conversation and financial education even more important for you to do at home. Like to really, really do at home. You need to have a plan for that. But imagine what difference that would actually make. So maybe consider that, mate. Consider it. I love love my participating whole life from a mutual company, my Roth IRA and health savings account. The 529 plans have also gotten good. Yeah, so you're in the States, mate. I mean, like I said, you've got some stuff that we don't have here in the UK at all. And I've got a couple of friends of mine who are advisors in the States, and they talk to me about some of this stuff. Like, and I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like some of the stuff that you have. 4 years till you reach the yearly limit you're saying there, Andrew. Okay, let me just scroll because I'm really mindful of the number of comments we've got here, and I'm also looking at time. We're over an hour, and I normally try and keep this to an hour. So let me just have a little scroll quickly and see where we are. Again, guys, if you have got value from this, please smash the like button. There's still about 70 people on there. We've got 42 likes. We can get up to 50. That will be amazing. There's a nice conversation about different stocks and funds that people own in here, which is great. Are there any questions? I don't have kids just yet. No, they'll blow all that money. Look, this is why. Look, you have to have that kind of conversation. You have to have these conversations early. You have to. And that's the difficult bit, because if you never had those conversations growing up, how are you going to have those conversations with your kids? I think you can definitely do it for sure. There's no doubt in my mind that you can do it. But doing something because you fear the worst, that your kids are just going to blow it, shouldn't prevent you from doing it anyway. Because what if you're wrong and they do turn out all right and they do have they don't blow the money, they have better sense because you've had these conversations. Only you will know the kind of relationship that you want to cultivate with your children. At least that's what I believe anyway, right? And you have control over that and maintaining that. And yeah, there are outside external forces that can often, take people off track for sure. That is a reality. But you have a certain level of control. And I don't think you can go into this under the, thinking the worst and letting that stop you, because the impact that it might have is huge. I mean, 202 grand. Even if it's 100 grand, I mean, come on, seriously. I wish someone gave me 100 grand. Actually, you know what? I wish someone didn't give me 100 grand when I was 18. That wouldn't have been good for me. But I never had any financial education at all. I didn't have my own money until I was 18 years old. So imagine, I mean, they gave me 50 quid when I came back to this country when I was 18 years old. Imagine it was 100 grand. I probably would have killed myself. Just done mad stuff, right? But I never had that education. If someone had talked to me about it, then maybe I would have made better decisions. For sure, I would have made better decisions. So it's a really, really difficult balancing act. I've worked with a lot of clients who are very, very worried about, money that their kids will inherit, and it keeps them up at night. So I know where that sentiment comes from. Right, I'm just scanning. You can't stick it in a trust, no, because it's written into the account that the child takes ownership at age 18. So what a lot of wealthy clients that I used to work with would do is they may not necessarily use the junior ISA wrapper, but what they will do is they will have an investment which sits in a trust, and the trust will have rules around how the money is dispensed. And for really wealthy clients, I remember working with a really wealthy family once. The son had issues, was in university, was a bit of a naughty boy, and they had incentives built into the payout of this trust money. So you had to achieve a 2.1 degree, right? Thing on your degree. You had to, if you found a job paying this much, you would get this much, so that you can build that into trust structures per se. But those types of things, because of normally you're talking quite sizable amounts of money, you need the proper trusts sort of lawyers to help you build it with the right setups and stuff. But if you can do a normal investment account and put it in trust, for sure you can do that. I mean, you could have like a general investment account with money paid in, and you can put that in trust for your kids. You can still do that as a normal person, for sure. All right, last question. Has anyone taken a look at the country allocation in the standard pension you get at work? 10 to 15% UK weighted. It will vary depending on who you are with and who your administrator is. But if it is 10 to 15% for where you are right now, I wouldn't be surprised about that, because the UK, generally speaking, isn't going to be the largest weighting for most investment portfolios. Most investment portfolios will have more exposure to the States, generally speaking. At least I would say probably 40, 50% at least in most investment portfolios that are pension managed or pension investment portfolios. That's what I've typically seen. There are some that may be more UK focused, because that's their investment objective or their investment thesis. But generally speaking, if it's globally, they'll have more exposure to the United States. But again, this is one thing. If you are in a workplace pension, a lot of the time you're just going to be put into like a bog standard balanced fund. So if you haven't checked how your money's invested in your workplace pension, you really should. Because if you go into a default fund, which is normally 50% equities, 50% bonds, and you're going to be working for the next 20, 30 odd years, your money's not working as hard as it should be. You really should think about seeing what other options you have, for sure. I'm just looking at here. Okay, cool. Right. Okay. Guys, thank you so much for this evening. A little over, but I have enjoyed this. Thank you. It is Saturday tomorrow, so there will be a break tomorrow in the streams. We'll come back on Sunday for finance clinic, questions, all that kind of good stuff. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you got some value from it. If you did, please remember to smash the like button. And also, look, if you think you know someone who may benefit from watching this, share this across your socials. That will be amazing. We are growing steadily at this point in time. I'm thankful for that. So thank you, everyone. Was there something else I was going to mention? I can't remember if there was. No? All right. We'll call it for what it is. Cheers, guys. Catch you in a bit.
Yeah. Surprise, a little different than you're used to. Yeah. Dropping these bars on YouTube, knowledge I introduce you. Yeah. We chasing this money like it's the prize, it's the voodoo. Fugazi, fugazi, it's just a lie we buying into. We need some cars on deck. Get the rollies, get the Moe, all the Mars on deck. We got the traders, got the picture with the Bentley in Dubai. Are you dripping in designer, looking fly? On the bombardier, sipping on the wine. Broke man, we broke. Where's the fun in being broke? Stocks and bonds get you yo. That's what I'm teaching these folks. I see that smoke, see them choke. Getting coke. While I'm researching these stocks, buying coke. 20 months on the channel, million people taking note. I got a warrant for Buffet. I'm coming for his vote.